Good afternoon, and it's great to see so many of you here for our discussion on quantum computers. So these are a new type of computer based on the principles of quantum mechanics, which promise to be endlessly more powerful than even the fastest machines we have today. Academics have been working on these for decades, but companies say that the day quantum computers actually leave the laboratory and might start driving economic value may finally be in sight. I'm Isabella, I'm a reporter from Bloomberg News, and I'm lucky enough to be joined today by two of the people actually building them. Welcome. Jan, Théau, can you introduce yourself, tell me what commercializing quantum computing means to you, and give me a brief overview of where your company is in their journey towards that at the moment. Théau?
Yep. So, hi everyone, I'm Théau Peronnin. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Alice & Bob. I'm a physicist by training turned entrepreneur. And so at Alice & Bob, what we do is that we build superconducting qubits like IQM and Jan. But we do so with a special kind of design called CAD qubits that are here to solve one of the main challenges of building reliable and impactful quantum computers, which is to make them actually quantum thanks to error correction. So the question is, when can we start playing with those? Where are we in distributing that? And so in our case at Alice & Bob, we're just transitioning. We've been cooking for quite a few years, and now that we have some very exciting hardware that we're starting to deliver to the first HPC centers and also to governments that are building their own expertise around this completely new and strategic technology. So we're still in this ramp-up phase where the machines are not yet breaking any codes or solving problems that are completely intractable, but where the impact is such, it's coming so fast that they need to start building software. And to build that software, they want to access our prototypes. So this is why we're starting to deliver such prototypes to our clients.
Thank you. Jan?
Yeah, welcome everyone. Jan, one of the founders of IQM, which is a spin-out here from Finland, out of Aalto University and VTT. So like most of the startup founders, I have a background in physics, coming more from the scientific side. And we started the company in around 2018. And we have the goal to really be one of the globally leading companies when it comes to quantum computing, especially on the, what you mentioned, commercialization and productization side of things. So we have been putting a lot of effort in actually building a real product out of the computers. And what this means in our case is actually we are running a chip factory here in Finland, where we produce on 200 millimeter silicon wafers the chips. And then we integrate them into full-stack quantum computers. So we also have an assembly line where we then actually build the whole computers together, which are still rather big machines, like a few meter by a meter in size. And we sell them either into supercomputing centers, data centers, so we really ship physically the machine on site, or we sell the computing time through the cloud. We are running one of our data centers in Munich, for example, where we have our computers in the cloud directly or through partners like AWS. And we have been pushing this quite a lot. So we are the company that globally has sold most computers into data centers. And we think that this is really necessary to drive adoption. Because if you think about it from a use case perspective, and Théau mentioned it also from a software perspective, it's hard to develop software if you don't have the hardware, right? This is why we think actually it's very important to get the machines out there into the field. We try to build them also in a quite open and modular way so that actually whatever is your preferred way of programming, you can use our quantum computers. And with this, we try to bridge the gap between the system side and then the use case side, which you might find in chemistry, finance, and so on.
Mm-hmm. You've touched on what I find to be a really fascinating dynamic of this ecosystem. So there's a lot of startups, scale-ups like yours, also bigger firms. A lot are using different technologies as the building blocks of their quantum computers. So, you know, and yourselves included, there's a bit of divergence. So, Théau, do you not think Jan's technology is going to work?
So, it's fun. It's because I've been in the field for a few years now, and I mean, here you have many investors in the room, and for years the whole question is, but how can I know which platform? Is it going to be iron? Is it going to be photons? Is it going to be superconducting chips? Where should I put my money? And how do you understand that? And the more the field progresses, the more I think personally, every single of those platforms can get it to a final product. Now the question is the economics, in terms of how much will each platform cost to buy in terms of CapEx and in terms of OpEx. Because here, the framework in which you should think about quantum, it's going to be at the heart of computing infrastructure. And we're seeing more and more how critical the cost of both acquiring and running those computing infrastructure is becoming. So I think it's very interesting in that diversity of modalities that we have different trade-offs. Some are better in terms of clock speed, some are better at scaling, and that creates different economics. So obviously, I believe my technology will win, but eventually, it's going to be a business criteria and not solely a technology criteria.
Just to add on it, maybe if you come more from the, let's say, semiconductor or conventional compute side, one way to think about is that also there we have different types of chips, right? So we have CPUs. Nowadays, people talk a lot about GPUs because of the whole AI. So it's not so that one architecture or one way of doing needs to be the only one. And there are different problems that you solve on a CPU or GPU. Actually, you also have memories. There are also ways to implement quantum memories. And this is the way I see it, that you will have all kinds of problems. And there might be an optimized hardware for this problem set, and maybe some other hardware is more suitable for another one. I think at least in the near to midterm, this is how it's going to go. And from this perspective, I'm not actually worried at all that there are different efforts, because I think it's good to have the opportunity and the optionality to tackle then the different types of problems that we want to solve.
Absolutely. Théau, you sort of talked about the investors' confusion, I suppose. So I'm going to turn to the audience quickly. Can you put your hand up if you understand quantum mechanics? OK. A couple of you.
They're bluffing. We don't, they don't either, no one does.
Right, and if you didn't put your hand up, it's OK. It is an infamously difficult area to understand, right? So how does that stack when you're going to investors? You already have those deep tech caveats of near-term profitability, scientific uncertainty. You now have the fact that your technology is built on an infamously difficult thing to understand. Théau, can you talk to me a little bit about your early conversations with investors?
Yeah, so in my case, I fell down the rabbit hole way too many times. You know, you start asking physics questions to a physicist, and there you go for 2 hours of monologue. And eventually, my roadshow turned into me teaching quantum to a broad audience, but not necessarily, getting the results of fundraising. Now, I mean, we obviously succeeded to fundraise, and the way we crack that is by getting the conversation on the right territory, on the right topic, which is when you think about history repeating itself, or at least rhyming with itself, we're at the infancy of a new computing paradigm. And when you look at the 60s and 70s of classical computing, it was all about how did the governments, through the DARPA program, pull the whole industry forward. And so the way we're navigating those conversations now is to more insist on how we're building alignment of incentives, both strategic incentive, financial incentive, technological incentives, to achieve this success. Because contrary to Jan, in my opinion, computing is always about quasi-monopoly, at least in terms of who's grabbing the large part of the margins. And this is what quantum is all about. It's about stealing the margins of existing paradigm, because you're bringing in such a powerful new ingredient into your computing mix. It's not going to replace GPUs and CPUs, but it's definitely going to be the thing that dimensions your whole computing stack. And so those are the kind of conversation I rather have with investors nowadays, rather than explaining, Langevin equations and those kind of things.
How did you find it, Jan?
Yeah, of course. I mean, throughout the journey of a startup, you talk to different types of investors. And in the beginning, let's say the early stage VCs, they anyways make a bet on the technology. And I think they look very much like what's the team capable of doing, where do they come from, and is the vision correct? And then, of course, if you want, you can go deep into the details with some of those investors because some of them are very technical themselves. But then as you grow the company, the type of investors also change, and maybe they're more interested actually in your business model, the financial rationale behind it, and how you can drive such a story towards profitability, for example. And this, of course, changes a lot the narrative and the way you talk about your story. I think for a founder, the most important thing is that you find the right words, whomever you talk to, let it be an early stage investor, a financial investor, politician, scientist, or whatever, and to have the right narrative for each of them without twisting the story, right? You don't want to tell story A to this person or story B then to this person. So it always has to be the same story, but you have to find your own ways of doing it so that the others, that the person you talk to kind of hears it in their own way and their own words.
Yeah, words is interesting because there has been a lot of hype building on this area in the last couple of years. With hype, we've got some buzzwords, advantage, supremacy. I know kind of parallel to your business, but Q-Day is one of my favorites. Do you find introducing these buzzwords actually constructive in your conversations with investors?
I mean, we are right now in a situation where a lot of the news is about AI. So I think it's important that with Quantum we stay above the noise level. And from this perspective, it's good if there are big news out there. And it's good if big CEOs talk about this, like from the big tech companies. And this has changed over the last years. If you look at the media landscape, let's say 4 years ago, it was almost never happening that Microsoft or Google or IBM at the CEO level would talk about quantum, which has changed now. And I think this helps. And if the way to get there is to introduce some of those buzzwords, I don't mind. I think the point is that the content needs to be factual, and we should not kind of start creating wrong expectations. I think that's the risk that we have, is that some of those stories that are out there, they start creating wrong expectations, and I think this is dangerous.
Mm-hmm. Has the hype, I guess, we've seen with AI, has that affected your businesses or your strategies at all?
If I may. And, in my opinion, somewhat in a positive way, because what AI has really shown to the world is that in the 20th century, the economy was all about how do you access abundant and cheap energy, because you were transforming matter for industrial purposes. In the 21st century, you're transforming data and knowledge, and for that, you're consuming compute. And so nowadays, we're seeing investment in computing infrastructures that are on the scale of what used to be the scale only of energetical infrastructures. And so in that mindset, quantum is just a tiny subpart of that large pool of investment towards computing infrastructure. I think we're really in the infancy. I mean, when you look at how much money was poured into quantum over the last decade, everything included, it's what? A couple of tens of billion at the very, very most of it, which is barely a drop compared to what we're seeing in AI over the same period. So I think there is a lot of room to grow, but it's good that the AI wave shows how critical computing is becoming to our economies.
Mm-hmm. And maybe just to add, if you go even one, so I agree completely on the compute and infrastructure side of things, but if you even go one level above, I think it has also opened the eyes of many people on the kind of tech sovereignty and tech dependency topic, because in AI it is just the case that if some of the US players would not deliver anymore to Europe, for example, we are screwed. And I think many people woke up and said, okay, let's try to avoid a situation like this in other technologies, included quantum. So I think from this perspective, having this awareness is super important, and we are benefiting quite a lot from it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Especially since, I mean, Europe is so well positioned at the moment. There is both of us. There is a few other very strong startups in quantum. I mean, for once, it's one of those technical races where Europe is not necessarily a challenger. We can be a front runner here to deliver that technology, and I think it's extremely exciting. Should we manage to mobilize capital at the right scale, because this is really the challenge for Europe. It's the Draghi report, basically, on how we're going to leverage that incredible opportunity we have thanks to our very strong academia in Europe.
Yeah, you've brought us onto that key issue of still getting scale-up funding as a deep tech in Europe can be pretty difficult. I mean, Jan, you've got quite a large footprint across Europe now. Was that true in your experience of raising?
I think it helps. Of course, it creates an overhead on the management side, and you need to be careful not to make it too complicated. But given that it has this sovereign aspect, so for example, we have a larger operation in Germany as well, and we got a lot of support not only from private investors in Germany, but also then from the German government or then the local government in Munich, for example. So I think there is this aspect that people say, okay, if you do something here locally, we will support you also financially, and this in the end creates a situation where we always, of course, then have to balance, like, how thinly can we spread our operations around the world versus how much kind of financial benefit do we get out of it.
Yeah, and whilst we're on Europe, I want to zoom in on France, where Alice and Bob is headquartered, I believe. So the last couple of years, we've seen some quite sudden political instability. Macron, who has been a very pro-tech, I think, suddenly looks a little bit weaker. It also looks like France is going to have to rein in its public spending. Has this affected your decision-making at all, Théau?
But indeed, I mean, there is some, some lack of global alignment in France in terms of politics, and that is really a shame in the sense that when you see how much change Europe needs to implement to deliver on those opportunities. We need extremely strong alignment and political focus to deliver that, which is lacking in France, but I think more generally Western democracies are a bit shaken up at the moment in how they can react in this new world order that is getting drawn as we speak. But for us, it hasn't really changed the thing, because the other aspect of quantum we're not going to be shy about at Alice and Bob is that quantum computers are also a weapon. In our opinion, quantum computers are good at two things. The one is making chemistry and exact science, material science, biology, all those kind of things. And the second thing is breaking codes. And so this is well understood at the right level of governments in France, across Europe. And so I believe quantum is going to be pretty well protected from that turmoil because of that dual aspect and the challenges Europe is facing in that regard.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and we talk about the wider challenge Europe is facing. Alice and Bob now has a location in the US as well. Can you talk me through that? Do you possibly have one day going to the US to raise capital in mind?
I mean, we're raising capital everywhere, basically, at that point. But the reason we're in the US is because when you're building tech, it's the main market to address. So we need to sell there. And we're also extremely proud to be part of the DARPA program, so the Defense Innovation Agency of the US Army, in that regard. But it requires us to be extra cautious, not to get tangled up into export controls and those kind of heavy geopolitical regulations, because thankfully quantum computing is not much about regulation, contrary to other sectors of innovation, except for the dual use aspect and the extraterritorial laws. So we remain extremely European rooted, but we need to become a global leader, and for that means serving properly the US market with the right caution when it comes to export control.
Mm-hmm. So another very interesting dynamic I find of this ecosystem, of this race, is that it's not just startups and scale-ups like yours working towards building quantum computers. We've also got some of the biggest companies in the world having a crack, so like Google, IBM, Microsoft. Jan, how does it feel to be competing with companies which are thousands of times larger than yours?
I think generally it's a good thing because it shows that the technology has real potential, right? I think it's a bit questionable if it's a technology where only very visionary startup founders are willing to go in and invest. But if you have big tech giants saying, hey, this is actually, and some of them say that this is part of our core strategy, it shows that the technology is real and something real can be done. Obviously, for us, the challenge then is how can we make sure that in such an environment we can compete on the technology and product side? And I think the big advantage that startups have is that they can be more agile, more risk-taking, and in this way actually deliver technology that is at least on par. So just to give you an example, when we started in 2019, Google had just released what they called the quantum supremacy experiment. So they were already quite far in their race. And right now they're publishing results on 105 qubit chips or something like this. We are transitioning to our 150 qubit machines. So actually we did manage to move much faster than the established ones because we have this kind of agility and risk-taking approach to technology. So capital is one thing, but then the way you make the capital work is actually the more important one. And this comes to talent, to people. We have really great people here in Europe also building the technology. Lots of the fundamental technology actually comes from Europe and has been kind of moving to the US. So from this perspective, I think it makes me proud to be there with the big names. But of course also it is a challenge, but we are willing to take this challenge.
I'm glad you brought up talent because you're both doing some pretty interesting things in that space. So IQM has IQM Academy. Alice and Bob, I think you're hiring pretty largely now, and not many of them need to be quantum physicists. Can you both tell me a little bit about these schemes and why you feel the need to make those investments?
I mean, at the end of the day, technology doesn't build itself, or at least not yet. So it's people building technology. And this is the absolutely main priority for us, is to keep the intensity of talents that we started with, but manage to scale it up. I think our industry reached the point where we're kind of saturating what the academic pipeline can produce in terms of talents. But at the same time, the technology has grown mature enough so that it's no longer just about quantum physicists. Actually, the majority of the profiles we're hiring a wide range of engineers, because the challenges we're facing at the moment in terms of tech, what engineers call integration hell, where you have several building blocks that works properly, but now you're trying to assemble everything and scale the whole system. And to do so, you no longer need 5 physicists in a garage. What you need are hundreds of engineers writing code, testing components, scaling the system, working on cost, yield, reliability, those kind of things. So we now have access to a much broader pool of talent, all the way from PhD to technicians to move towards that industrial phase of the field.
Maybe just to add, because it's not only companies like us now, we are growing a whole industry and a whole ecosystem. And this means that all our partners in the supply chain, they also need some level of quantum expertise. It doesn't mean they need to have all the quantum PhDs and this, but I think for them to support us in our journey and enable our roadmap on the supply chain side, it's important that they get some level of understanding on the quantum side. And this is why we are investing in, you mentioned the IQM Academy, and we have many other tools and do hackathons to make sure that the ecosystem around us can grow with us and has enough understanding of quantum to kind of produce whatever they need to produce to make our roadmap work.
Mm-hmm. Have you found talent to be a problem when scaling up then?
No. I mean, it takes time and a lot of effort. And I don't know about you, Jan, but I still have to get involved to seduce some key talents one by one, but I guess in every pretty intense tech race, it's all about securing key profiles and then leveraging that to create momentum. So the moment we start losing this from our priority list as CEOs and co-founders, I think we're doomed. And I think some of the inertia of large corporates come from the fact that they do not nurture talents strongly enough. And talents can come in all shapes and form, every ages, every role. But as soon as you've identified some key profile within your organization, you need to build around them. And that is what Founders Mode lets you do. It's not about me doing the thing, micromanaging. It's me empowering the right people throughout the organization.
Yeah, I mean, in our case, I think we have quite a strong brand in the market, and for most positions that we open, we get actually hundreds of applicants. So that's not so much the challenge. The challenge but I don't think that this is quantum related, is very much then on building a very senior leadership team, which can always bring the company to the next phase, especially if you grow quite fast. The next phase comes very fast, and maybe the person who brought you from A to B is not anymore the person who brings you from B to C. So I think this is a typical growth challenge that startups have, but otherwise I would agree with Théau, yeah.
I'm going to bring us back to the whole idea of you guys competing with those very large companies. What does it mean for you if they win?
If they win? Oh, they won't. That's for sure. Now, the thing you have to realize is that those are extremely impressive brands with track records that are absolutely history-defining. But at the same time, quantum is not their core business. The code red in Google was not because of their quantum experiment. It's because they have a threat to their core businesses. And that means that the top leadership there is not all in, locked in into making it work, contrary to us. And the other thing is that when you look under the hood, they are not that much larger than we are. I think Google should be about between 200 and 300 people on their quantum team. The largest should be maybe IBM with a few hundreds of people. In our case, we're 160. I don't know.
More than 300 we are, yeah.
Yeah, so it's the same kind of orders of magnitude. And when you look at the lineup of key physicists, the kind of ideas, the velocity to innovate, yeah, well, there's going to be a proper match there.
And of course, you know, you're not just competing. There's also partnerships. You're both involved with NVIDIA's NVQ Link. What tips would you give to founders who likewise want to pursue big partnerships like these?
Well, of course, I strongly believe in ecosystems and building things together, and I think it's about sharing the vision with whoever your partner should be, and then aligning on this. I think the challenge with partnering with corporates is that within their organization, there are many layers, and you need to find out what are the people you need to talk, because usually you need to talk to different layers at the organization to make something work in the end. So I think that's the biggest challenge, to find the right sponsors in the organization, convince them of your vision and what the companies should do together, and then make sure that the teams who actually have to implement it then get the right message within their organization.
Yeah, in my case, I would just add that the way I view it is partnerships are a catalyst of success, but you still need something to catalyze. So if you solely rely on partnerships, you're going to have a hard time, because those large groups might completely change their policy. But as soon as you have a strong backbone, tech-wise, product-wise, those partnerships can be the real key to your success. And I think what NVIDIA is structuring in terms of ecosystem that we're proud to contribute to is absolutely key in empowering the whole quantum industry. And this is definitely the type of enabler that we're looking for.
I'm going to use our last 30 seconds quite selfishly. When and how will a quantum computer touch my life?
Directly or indirectly?
Indirectly is fine.
Indirectly, I think early 2030s, as soon as you have novel material that are designed. And also, if you have Bitcoins, you might want to liquidate those by then.
Thanks for the tip.
Well, maybe the fact that you're sitting here today shows you how far we are with the industry. So I think it's very important for the whole society to be aware today that quantum computers are out there, they are working, and it's, I think it's going to be sooner than we think.
OK. Well, I'll let you get back to it then. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.